Welcome to the Film Library, a Kanopy podcast. I'm Kristy Puchko, entertainment editor at Mashable, professional film critic, and someone who firmly believes laughter is cardio.
And I'm Jeff Rauseo, social media influencer, a meme enthusiast, and a person who once laughed so hard at a movie, I spit out a drink on my lovely wife. But we're married, so it worked.
This week, we're embracing the absurd, the awkward, the laugh out loud with Kanopy's Just Joking Comedies in June collection. It's a celebration of cinematic silliness, from sharp satire and deadpan humor to rom-coms that still make us swoon and snort.
We'll highlight our favorite picks, share which films had us cry laughing, and maybe even reveal which ones made us question our sense of humor entirely. I'm looking at you, hangover sequels.
So whether you're into dry wit, screwball chaos, or you just need a break from doom scrolling, this episode's for you. And I'm going to kick things off going all the way back, because comedy in film has existed as long as film. And I haven't gone back quite that far, but I'm going back to 1924 and Sherlock Jr. This is a Buster Keaton movie. It is iconic. And I love going back to the films of Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd and Charlie Chaplin, because some of these scenes are so iconic that we know the scene even if you don't know the movie it was from. But watching them in context, it is just wild. And Buster Keaton is really interesting because, the silent film era, I think people have a tendency to think of kind of big acting in it because of silent film. But Buster Keaton, very notably, very dry in his facial expressions. He was called the Great Stone Face. And it's because his face is comically stoic no matter what's going on. And that contrasted with the zany kind of slapstick that's happening in this movie is just deeply funny. And you can still see actors today referencing Buster Keaton because he understood this. And this movie is about a movie projectionist who falls in love with a girl, and then there's another suitor vying for her hand, and he sort of frames Buster Keaton as a thief. And then Buster Keaton is also wants to be a detective. And then he goes back to his job at the movie theater and he imagines everything playing out like it was in a movie. So there's a movie within the movie where Buster Keaton goes from playing this, projectionist who wants to be a detective to being Sherlock Jr., master detective. And it becomes this zany crime comedy within this romantic comedy, sort of prototype movie. But very funny. And what's so cool about it is it's also an action comedy. There's a scene where he is sitting on bike handles where another person is riding the bike and then they fall off the bike. And it's like a Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker movie where he's just on the bike handles, but it's going through all these things and he doesn't know the other guy has fallen off. So he is completely unaware of the danger he is in. And we as an audience are I did that in silent because silent film.
That was good.
That was a lot of
No. I get it now. This is the comedy episode.
Yeah, you know the joke is good when I have to explain it.
It's always the key to a good joke.
It's such a funny movie, and I watched it today again just to revisit it because it had been a while, and I was man, it just made me want to do a whole deep dive back into silent comedy because there's something so magical when the only thing happening is visuals for these. They have title cards and there's music, but it's that kind of dun, 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 it's not a soundtrack that is there to make you laugh. You're really relying on the talent. And, Kanopy has a lot of options for this. So you can really just go down that rabbit hole. But if you want to watch one of these movies, you could definitely draw a direct line to oh, this references this and that. And it just, these guys created a path we are still on.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you mentioned Jackie Chan too, which made me think all these stunts too. That's Buster Keaton. I actually think I read he broke his neck making this movie, and I don't know if it was from that bike fall or what, but that he was insane. People think Tom Cruise is insane now. The stuff Buster Keaton was doing with no safety protocols at all, insane. That man was insane, and that is another really cool piece of those. I don't know if people even realize, but they didn't have much technology. They were he was falling off things and they were dropping houses on him. That's what they were doing.
In this one, there's a scene where he sets up a box that has a costume change in it in a window and then jumps out the window and has the costume on. And it's practical. They're using cuts and angles to make this happen. So it's not like, it's just very funny to watch this stuff and be like,
Yeah.
people were just so inventive, even in 1924 in these movies. But yeah, there were parts of it where I was like, I can tell what's going to happen, but I'm watching and being like, how did they do this? And I love that even now it's like, it's not obvious. He was a master.
Yeah, he was. And speaking of, I have my another film on this list. We're actually going to mention Buster Keaton, believe it or not. I'll save that. That's a little trivia tidbit. But for my first pick, we're going to transition projectionists into the world of VHS and video stores. A movie that I love, because if you love movies, I think you have to love this movie. It's just so much fun. And it's Be Kind, Rewind, which I have a funny story about myself, but I'll tell you, I think this movie's super, super underrated. And the only reason I ever saw this movie was because I tried to buy tickets to one of the Saw sequels, and it was rated R, and this movie wasn't. So this is the one we bought the tickets for back in the day when you couldn't just get R-rated tickets when you were at 17. And they kicked us out because nobody else bought tickets for Saw, so they came to the theater. And there were 8 of us sitting there, and they were like, well, we didn't sell any tickets, so you guys are in the wrong movie. But they let us go watch the movie we bought tickets for, and it ended up being Be Kind, Rewind, which was kind of a very happy accident. But this movie, so I've come to love it for that reason. But it's got Jack Black, Mos Def, Danny Glover, Mia Farrow, and the whole premise is Jack Black and Mos Def, Jerry and Mike, they have this video store it's 2008, so it's failing like most video stores were, unfortunately. But what ends up happening is they accidentally erase all of the VHS tapes. And so basically this whole movie is about them. They call it sweeting. They go and remake these movies themselves. So they grab cameras and Jack Black is ridiculous. They're doing movies like RoboCop, and he's just wearing like a baseball helmet or something, and just looks like RoboCop. I mean, it's all just like the goofiest practical effects, like you were making a movie with your friends in high school.
Deeply DIY.
It's so DIY, but it's so much fun because if you love movies, you just like. I feel like everybody's done this. Like you've just dressed up, got the camcorder, and just like record yourself making a movie. So that's like what this is, just minimal props, but a ton of heart. And then they end up kind of like bringing the whole community together. Like they end up kind of loving these sweeted versions of the films, and the whole community comes together and kind of like, brings the video store back in a way. But the chemistry is great. Jack Black is always incredible, but him and Mos Def play off each other really, really well. And as a person who loves physical media myself, this is like, if you haven't seen this movie and you're like a VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever you collect, if you're like a big physical media fan, this is a little love letter to that era before streaming, when like these video stores were truly the cultural hub where like you found out about movies. And it's great now to have Kanopy and selections like this. I'd love to also have the other options still. So, this was the Kanopy before Kanopy. It was you went to the video store and you talked to the clerk and said, I saw RoboCop, what's next? And he'd give you 5 options and you'd be like, all right, let me go pick the tape off. So it's just a ton of fun. And it actually did like spark kind of a movement for people to go, and sweeting is now like a real term. I don't know if you've heard it, but like it's a real thing that people go and do, which is a ton of fun. So this movie, a very happy accident that I ever got to see it, but I ended up loving it.
I love that. I think we've talked about this before. That's how I saw The Sixth Sense. I was trying to go see Detroit Rock City, but I was too young.
Yep.
And so I walked into The Sixth Sense on opening day.
These kids don't even know the struggle of trying to buy the R-rated ticket, and yeah.
Sometimes I'll have to tell you about how I saw Blair Witch, because I had to engage in trickery. Story for another time. I want to move on to my next pick is actually also a movie about movies, and it's Paris When It Sizzles from 1964. It's a screwball comedy, meaning it's like a rom-com that kind of has a high concept. It's William Holden and Audrey Hepburn, and he is a screenwriter who has sold the concept for a movie called The Girl Who Stole the Eiffel Tower. He hasn't written a word of it. And the producers are like, we'll send a girl to type up the script and we'll get it in a week. And so they send Audrey Hepburn, and she shows up. He has written nothing. And it's him riffing what the movie could be, and then they keep cutting to the movie. And like in Sherlock Jr., they become in the movie. So they're seeing the fantasy of their own evolving love story as they fall in love, but as like a spy comedy. So He will say things like, it says the girl who stole the Eiffel Tower as a title card. And then you hear someone like Sinatra sing the theme. And then you hear Frank Sinatra go, the girl who stole the Eiffel Tower also stole my. And it's like that kind of thing where they're talking about like, oh, who will play this initial love interest for Audrey Hepburn? And it's Tony Curtis. And she's like, it has to be someone handsome. And he's like, he's not that good looking. And so then it becomes like a meta context. And like Tony Curtis's character over the course of this movie that doesn't exist gets frustrated how small his part is and keeps commenting on it. So there's a lot of like humor within that. And then it's also these two people trying to figure out if they can be together. So their own doubts work their way into the script. So at one part, like she turns it into a horror movie where he's actually a vampire who just wants to suck the life out of her. And at another part, he imagines that she's not actually into him. So maybe she turns a gun on him. And like, there's all these like comedic bits that are reflective of genre, but also reflecting their own insecurities as they start to fall in love with each other. It's just very funny. It's very daffy. And like, a crazy movie to watch now and just see how it's both very bouncy and very weirdly subversive. Like there's a whole scene where he's like, and then we dissolve to black with them in the bed. And she's like, that's very suggestive. And he's like, you don't know what they're doing. They could be playing Parcheesi. And they cut back and they're literally playing Parcheesi.
I love that.
Like, I feel like I'm just telling you all the jokes, but there's so many jokes in this, but it's a deeply sweet movie. I'm like a big Audrey Hepburn girl. I had like a phase like a lot of us did, where I just watched every one of her movies. And I'm so glad this one's on Kanopy because I had not watched it in a long time. And it's just still very funny and very like silly, but also weirdly very smart about filmmaking.
It sounds incredible. I had never, this is the first I've heard of this movie, but it sounds like it's just like super meta, like that kind. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something special about that when you, I mean, that show that just came out, like The Studio, and when it gets like super meta, I guess you kind of have to be into movies to like get it and be like, know what they're doing. But like for people who love movies, those kind of things are fantastic. So that sounds like on my watch list now because I didn't know that existed. But I think
it'll be a good one. Well, watch it with your wife. Give
what
her a
year did it come out?
1964.
Okay, so very close to my next pick. So it's similar, a little slapstick type comedy. Okay. I need to put this on the list next because my second pick is from 1963, and it's a mad world. I hope I got all the mads in there. I think it's 4. If it's not, you can call me out. But this movie is like, first, I had seen it when I was a real little kid. So personal story about this one. This was my mom's father's favorite movie by far. He was a big comedy guy. He saw The Hangover in theaters by himself when he was like 80 and thought it was the funniest thing he's ever seen. He loved comedies. So he had this on VHS. We used to watch this one, and it's just slapstick. So like I watched it as a kid, like 5, 6 years old. It's just cars and slapstick and a lot of fun. But the whole premise of the movie is basically you get this dying criminal, and this is a trope that's been used a lot. You know, he's buried a treasure of $350,000 under a freeway, and all these strangers kind of come together on this chaotic treasure hunt to go find it. And it's all across Southern California. So like if you're looking for like a little classic Hollywood, LA, 1960s, like there's lots of great scenes in this and places you'll recognize, which is really cool. But the cast is like I'll name so like Spencer Tracy, Ethel Merman, Sid Caesar, Mickey Rooney, Jonathan Winters, Milton Berle, Buddy Hackett. I mean, it's like literally anybody who had any moment in comedy in the 60s was in this. And then they have all these incredible cameos. And this is where Buster Keaton comes in. It was actually one of his last, I don't know if it is his last, but definitely one of his last ever on-screen roles where he makes a cameo. The Three Stooges make a cameo. You'll see a bunch of other comedians from the 60s come in here and make cameos and, you know, all kinds of stuff. It's like the most insane movie at scale in terms of a cast that I've probably ever seen. And just the scale of the movie itself too, like I think the original cut was supposed to be 4 hours. Like it's a long movie. It's filmed in Panavision. So I'm hoping they do a 70 millimeter festival by my house in over in Boston. I'm hoping I can go see it in 70 millimeter in a theater. But it's just so fun. It's just, you know, it's Rat Race. There's another movie that's very similar, but I feel like this is the one that's always stood out to me. Just the way it's shot, the way it's made, everyone who's in it. And of course, like just the timeless themes of greed and what people will do to get, $350,000 in 1963 is a good chunk of change. So they do some pretty crazy stuff. There's tons of slapstick comedy. I mean, if you like the people that are in this and you like that era of comedy, this is like the movie that it's like movie 43, but not bad. Like it has that huge cast, but it's not horrible. It's actually a really good movie. I 100% agree
with you, but like, wow,
that's a transition. I know.
No, that was amazing. More movie 43 catching strays on this episode. I fully support.
It's like that, but not bad. We're gonna put that on the posters for the re-release of Mad World.
I love that. Mine is similarly, my next pick is from 1985. It is similarly a very crowded cast with just an amazing comedy sense. It is Clue, which is so funny because it's like, it continues to be funny to me, the idea of making movies based on board games, and yet we do.
We do it.
But it's like, if someone's going to do it, this is the one that actually kind of made sense to do it, because in Clue, there is a murder mystery. And so, like, this is the setup. It's written and directed by Jonathan Lynn, who also did My Cousin Vinny and A Whole Nine Yards. So, like, chances are you're familiar with his sense of humor. At the time, this did not do well. It is pretty much considered a cult classic. I will say I've never had the chance to see this in theaters. I would love to. But when they released it in theaters, the premise is a bunch of strangers have gathered together at a mountaintop mansion on a dark and stormy night where they are hosted by a butler played by Tim Curry. And just imagine that smile, and already you're off to a start. You know where we're going. And they all have code names. So, Professor Peacock and Colonel Mustard and Mrs. White. And they don't know why they're there. And then someone dies and they're like, okay, no one can leave until we figure out who killed Mr. Body. And then other people start to die. But it's like this very goofy farce where there's like a lot of sexual innuendo and there's a lot of very silly jokes. There's jokes about dangling modifiers. And I am the kind of nerd that is like, love that for us. And like truly, truly, truly an amazing movie. But at the end of it, in a very... like, honestly, I love the ambition of this. They made 3 different endings, and the way it was supposed to work was you would go to see it, and you would see one of those endings, and it was not a hit, and so that didn't work. And then they were like, when they released it to TV, they were just like, we'll just put all the endings in there. So it's like when you watch it, it's like the theme music, like dun 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 dun, and there's a title card, and it's like that's what could have happened, but maybe. And so there's 3 endings. So I guess brace for that. But what's so funny about this movie is that, like, the cast is Elaine Brennan and Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, Christopher Lloyd, Michael McKean, Martin Mull, Leslie Ann Warren, Colleen Camp. Like, everybody in it is just incredibly funny, and their interactions are so sharp. The timing is so sharp. This is a movie I have just watched over and over. When I first watched it, I was just a kid watching it on Comedy Central and just obsessed with it. And then, like, as an adult, I saw it on DVD and was like, mine. And like, anytime it's on, if I'm scrolling through channels and it's on, day done. I'm sitting and I'm watching this movie. I can't walk away from it. But Clue, truly, I find one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And it's just like, because the jokes are so packed in that every time I watch it, I catch something else. Yeah. Just a visually very funny movie. All these people are so on top of it. So yeah, if you have not discovered the glory of Clue, check it out on Kanopy. If you have, it's way funnier even than you remember. So go watch it again.
So let me ask you, if it's on Kanopy, do they show all the endings, or do you get to choose? Because I recently watched it for the first time, and I have there's a new 4K release if you want to see it in all its glory, but you have to pick when you start the movie.
Oh,
so then I had to go back, and I was like, well, I want to see all 3. So I had to watch all 3 separately.
I do think that's a new innovation, because I think even my DVD is just all 3 movies.
It just plays them, right?
Yeah. Which is like, honestly, I'm glad, because there are lines in it that are very iconic, and I would hate to lose any of those from the ending.
That's kind of the way I felt. I was like, well, I don't know. We'll start with ending A, and then we got to B and C, and I was like, I kind of want. Why didn't they just give me all those? Like, it would have been more fun to just show me everything, because they do really work so well.
It's a bold swing that they literally were trying to do that. Honestly, I think they were like, people will keep coming. It's like.
Yeah, that is very bold for the time period. I feel like something like that could work now with some of the Do you think it could work? They did those like choose your own adventure things on Netflix.
Well, on
and like,
Netflix, but I mean, I think the thing in theaters, you and I know this, that people get very, I don't know, people take their phones to theaters. People have the ending of Sinners all over TikTok. So I
no,
just don't think it would play today either. I think people are too impatient for that.
you're right. That's you know what, and it would be spoiled within 30 seconds of the first screening of
Yeah.
whatever it was.
I'd love to live in a world where people would be like, yeah, let's go see Clue 3 different times at theaters so we get every ending.
I think that's a better world, to be honest.
I want to be there.
Well, I've got kind of this is very slapstick too, and this is also this was actually a true crime, so it's a little bit mystery, but we know what happened. And this is the movie Masterminds it's from 2016. It's based on the true story of a 1997 Loomis Fargo robbery, which I don't know if I have my math right, but I think it was one of the largest like cash robberies that had ever happened in the United States. So it was a huge deal, but the story behind it is what's completely wacky. And this one's actually directed by Jared Hess. So he's the guy who did Napoleon Dynamite. He did Gentlemen Broncos, if you've seen that. And the cast is, these comedies get stacked casts. Mm-hmm. This one has Zach Galifianakis, Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, Owen Wilson, Jason Sudeikis, and Leslie Jones. So it's like a big SNL. If you like SNL, ton of SNL alumni in here. But it's basically just this really bizarre, true in quotes, story of this armored truck driver who gets roped into this scheme by a bunch of people. He's kind of just like this hapless guy who is very awkward and cringy, and he gets totally taken advantage of, roped into this scheme to steal $17 million from his employer, the armored truck company. And so I will say, like, if you want, this is awkward humor, this is the cringe humor, this is, that Napoleon Dynamite type style. If you like maybe a little bit of like what Tim Robinson does more recently, it's in that same vein, but it's Zach Galifianakis at his height, and Kate McKinnon steals every scene she's in. There's one scene with a photo op between him and her and Zach Galifianakis, which is one of the funniest things that I've seen. She steals all the scenes, and it is like, it's all set in North Carolina. So they've all got these heavy accents, and they're all just like playing it up so high. Like, this is the biggest parody of like North Carolina and, backwoods and stuff. These people, it is so funny. But it's one of these it's a total comedy of errors. Just like every piece goes wrong, but at the end of the day, like, they actually end up pulling it off, and it turns into this like comedic heist movie, mm-hmm. which becomes really fun. But it's just like mostly accurate, believe it or not. The real guy who did this, his name is David Gant. He said like it's way funnier than what happened, but like mostly accurate. So you can just imagine, I don't know if you can imagine that this even happened, but like you can see it kind of unfold and be like, I guess so. Like, maybe you could be conned into this, and but so wild, so over the top. I watched this with my parents too. I've seen this a few times, and I put it in front of them, which is always my comedic test. Like, will this work for anybody? And they actually laughed, which is like, that's high praise for a comedy. If my parents laugh at it, they do not find a lot of stuff, especially the awkward type humor, like The Office and stuff. They don't find that to be funny. They laughed a lot at this one. So I think it's pretty wide appeal, although it is that type and style mm-hmm. of comedy. So I'd say give it a shot, especially if you like just kind of one of these weird, we had talked American Animals on a previous episode, which I ended up watching after your recommendation. I mean, it's like that, but very heightened. Like, you almost can't, like, this really happened, huh?
Sure.
And this is the comedy of errors that led to $17 million being stolen. That's a load of money. And they pulled it off. So it's really fun in that way.
I'll just see this one. That reminds me of I Love You, Philip Morris, which is also a true crime comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also on Kanopy. I'll have to check this one out. I somehow missed this one, even though I love Napoleon Dynamite. It
had a weird release, so I'm not like it bombed at the box office. It got delayed a bunch of times. I don't think they knew what to do with it, to be honest. And yeah, I ended up catching it on I got a Blu-ray copy of it years later just because of Zach Galifianakis. I was like, all right, let's try.
That's
It's
so
very funny.
because you and I don't talk in advance about like what our choices are going to be, so we can just talk about it when we get here. And it's funny to me that we both picked a like crime movie that did not do well, and we're like, "Hear us out. It's great though."
No, it really, yeah, it really is. I'll tell you, you don't need to look at box office numbers. Go discover movies. I'm telling you, this one's a good one. Who cares if nobody bought tickets?
Yeah, I love that. I do want to. So our next one, not a crime movie, not a cult classic or a bomb. It's actually a movie that you and I both liked so much that we're like, we
Love
don't. Who needs a listicle format? This is our podcast. Let's just both talk about it. So, what was the movie from 1995 that you and I both said had to make this episode?
Yeah, it was Clueless, which I ended up loving, and I have to give my wife a lot of credit because she grew up on this one and was like, when we first started dating, was like, "Have you ever seen Clueless?" No. Okay, we're doing that now, right now, and yeah, it hilarious, absolutely one of my favorites, and it's its 30th anniversary this year,
Which is crazy and
Yeah.
rude, and I don't appreciate that at all. No, yeah, this was like a movie that hit, and it was like the slumber party movie because every
Mhm.
girl I knew wanted to be Cher Horowitz. Like, it's like Cher. It's like obviously it is based on Jane Austen's Emma. I don't know why I said obviously, as if everybody's going like, yeah, no,
I didn't
totally.
know that.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like this is like, yeah, it's the plot of Emma where there's this young woman who thinks of herself as kind of like top tier in every respect, and so she's a very busybody for everybody's lives, and is like matchmaking her friends and stuff, and is not great at it generally. But this is like a very empathetic portrayal of her, but also like it imagines. What's so funny is that the slang in this, like as
The
if
best.
like
Yeah.
it's also good, and it's like it was a lot of that was not slang we were using, certainly not in Pennsylvania. But it became slang because everybody wanted to be like this reflection of teenhood seen in this movie. And to this day, I want one, Cher's closet, and two, and a computer that allows me to just like scroll through my little outfits to figure them out. Like,
It would be so nice. Yeah. And the closest I feel like I have to that is Stitch Fix, and it's not doing it for me. It's not close enough. I need the closet that lets me computerized, which like I know my wife, she grew up like, this is the only tech I need.
right.
I do not, I don't need any of this other stuff. Give me the closet.
It's also got one of the, I'm going to say, harshest insults I've ever heard on film. Do you know what one I'm talking about?
Full on Monet.
Oh, that's a good one. I was
That's pretty
thinking,
tough.
yeah, that is pretty brutal. It's like it's good looking for the close up. It's a mess. Like, ooh, but it's when Ty says, "You're a virgin who can't drive."
Oh, she says that all the time to me.
Yeah, because
That's so
like
funny.
if you were of that time when that movie hit, you were just like, "Oh God!" And what is hilarious is most of us were like young women who that completely applied to,
Absolutely.
and so you're just like, "Oh, ow." Mean Brittany Murphy.
Yeah.
Which yeah, Brittany Murphy is hilarious in this. Stacey Dash, Paul Rudd is in this. It's such a funny movie, and it's like it is a teen movie that proved teen movies could be a thing and like really kick off. Like it was like we had John Hughes. This was like a new generation
Yeah.
that was like really doing its own thing. And this movie is just like it is iconic for the fashion and the lines and the performances. And Alicia Silverstone is so good in this. Do you know the thing about her speech where she talks about the Haitians?
No.
There's like a speech where she has to talk about like whether or not we should allow like refugees in America, and she calls them the Haitians.
Oh,
And-
I've seen a clip of this recently. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was that Alicia Silverstone. That's how she pronounced it. And they were like, "No, that's great. That's great."
Leave it. Yep.
Yeah. And
No, she seemed perfect for. I mean, I don't know how you could put anybody else in that role. She's just perfect.
she's a dream, and it's like it's just still such a funny movie. It's so lovely, and it's a movie that really is empathetic toward most of the characters, even though they are
Yeah.
being kind of like they're clueless. Like it's very upfront about that, but it's like such a sweet movie. Also, the soundtrack still slaps.
hmm
Like every song that came on, I was just like,
It is. Yeah. It is so iconic to the point. Like we were just driving a Jeep through Beverly Hills the other day because I was on a trip in LA. My wife was like, "I feel like Cher," and I was like, "Yes, absolutely." We got the Jeep Wrangler right here. We had to
Did
find
you
where.
do it? Wait, did you rent a Jeep because of this? Or was it like fortuitous?
I mean, I gave her a Jeep because I thought it'd be cool to drive through Beverly Hills. Yeah, we got a Jeep.
I love that.
Yeah, it was super fun.
That's romance. Ah, good
Yeah.
for you.
And we drove right by whenever she's like, that's the street where she lived. And all, so it was a ton of fun. And it's still like, that's the crazy thing is like a lot of stuff from the 90s might not hold up that great, just like with tech and different, but this one feels different. It's like, you don't mind that the tech it's just pure nostalgia.
Yeah.
So it doesn't like throw anything off. It's
No,
just,
I will flag there's definitely words they use in this casually that we do not anymore.
yes, some things have not aged well.
Yeah, some things, yeah, but overall, like, still a very funny movie, and like, just I truly thought it was it's such a cool way to also reinvent like classic literature. Like, I like that you can watch
Yeah.
this and you're not necessarily going like, oh, obviously Jane Austen. But now, as an adult who is much more aware of Jane Austen than I was in, I don't know, third grade or however, I just remember the group I was hanging out with. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember like it was definitely grade school when this movie came out for me. But like, I didn't know a ton about Jane Austen then, but now it's very funny to me taking the Jane Austen world of Regency era England, where there's the marriage market and whatever, and applying it to teenagers who are taking themselves way too seriously. It's just perfect.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It weirdly really understands what that experience is like. And like, Cher is just, she's so silly and she's so lightly delusional, but we love her because in the end, she really is trying to do what she thinks is best for everyone. And yeah, then the scene on the stairs at the end is just, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, she's a sweetheart. Like, you wanna, and the funny thing is too, I feel like this created like a mini subgenre of like, let's make teen comedies about old books, like old stories. There's like a bunch based on
10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, Shakespeare adaptations.
The Man was one.
Yeah, like it kind of created, and those all came after Clueless. So it kind of like this light bulb went off, and they're like, "Oh, cool idea!" And it created this whole little subgenre.
What are public domain books we can sell to teenagers?
Just true. This may have been a play by the publishers,
but as someone who also loves
works.
10 Things, I'm not mad at that.
Yeah, no, Easy A. That's another one. Like there were so many that came from this. So really influential in that way too.
Yeah.
Like it was super unique, and everyone tried to copy it.
Yeah, props to director Amy Heckerling.
Yeah.
She really kicked the door open, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if she was the first to do it, but like, you can't deny the impact. I mean, people are still referencing Clueless in outfits and.
Oh yeah, it's like, quoted. I mean, in our house, it's Clueless and Mean Girls are like 1A, 1B, like for quotes. I mean, they're both at that level. So if you've seen one and not the other, they're 10 years apart, but they're very much like it's that iconic. So if you're younger and you only know Mean Girls, you got to go back and see Clueless too. And it's coming back to theaters for the 30th anniversary.
I love that. Oh my God.
It's going to be exciting.
I didn't think about that. I'll get to see Clueless in theaters.
You'll get to see Clueless in theaters. It's coming back for the 30th, and it's got a new 4K Blu-ray coming. Yeah, I saw it I was actually at Paramount. The guy had it on his desk. He got a little preview of it. Looks great.
Oh, so, very cool.
It's cool. Yeah. It's getting a nice 30th anniversary celebration.
I'm going to have to go buy a plaid yellow jacket.
Oh yeah.
Celebrate.
Well, that's funny too. That fashion is so back right now.
Yeah.
We walk around the mall now and we're just like, that's Clueless. Like it's come full circle now where we're getting the Clueless stuff back in stores at Forever 21.
Yeah, which I will say I am genuinely excited about, because at that time we did not have a Forever 21 near me, and like, this is my moment.
Yeah.
30 years later, I will look like Cher Horowitz.
Absolutely. I should get dressed up too. We're going to go for sure though, because we've never seen it in theaters, and it should be like, I think it's one of those movies that's just going to be so much fun to see with an audience.
Yeah. Yeah. That was definitely, I didn't see it in theaters. I watched it with my friends on VHS. So like, yeah, oh my God, what a time. I'm like already excited about this. Like, I have to go buy tickets. Goodbye. But what a fun collection.
Oh, there's so many too. This was honestly like making the list of, this was hard to narrow down.
No, it really was.
Yeah, there are so many great comedies on Kanopy. I could have had a list. I think I made a list of 15. It was like, let's get it down to 4, but I literally could have made a list of 50. I mean, that section is unbelievable. So dive right in.
Lots of treasures. Yeah, that's what's so cool about Kanopy. There's truly such a rich collection of comedies that, like, even if somehow Clueless is not your speed, There's tons of movies that could be.
Unbelievable selection, honestly. I really did. I had a hard time, and that's a good problem to have. And this episode could have been probably 3 hours long, but
Yeah, the long cut of this is 4 hours of
it's
us.
yeah. We have the it's a mad world cut, which is 4 hours director's cut. But for the purposes of this, that is our show. So we hope we brought you a few laughs, maybe a few movie night ideas that didn't involve rewatching the same sitcom for the 47th time. Guilty.
Same. I was like, that's a read. That's a
Yeah.
read to me personally. But remember, the Film Library drops new episodes twice a month, so subscribe now and let us be your cinematic guide with occasional detours into questionable comedy options.
We'll include our picks in the show notes and over on Kanopy's Letterboxd HQ account. And of course, all the movies we mentioned and many more, like we said, are streaming for free at Kanopy.com. All you need is a library card or a university ID. Seriously, no joke.
You can keep up with us and Kanopy on social media. I'm the Kristy Puchko on Instagram, and I'm also on Blue Sky and Letterboxd. So just search for me, Kristy Puchko. That's KristyPuchko.
And I'm Jeff Rauseo. You can find me on every social media platform and over on Letterboxd as well. Just search my name, JeffRauseo.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, laugh responsibly.